Welcome to Banking on Cannabis, the podcast where we explore what financial health really looks like in the cannabis industry through unfiltered stories from operators, innovators, and the people shaping the financial infrastructure that keeps it moving forward. I'm your host, Terry Mendez, the CEO of Safe Harbor. At Safe Harbor, we've spent over a decade helping cannabis businesses operate securely, transparently, and with the financial services they need to grow. This podcast dives deeper into the real-world lessons, challenges, and successes shaping the future of cannabis finance and operations. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to kick off our first episode with someone leading one of the most recognizable brands in cannabis, Jonathan Black, CEO of Cheech Chong. Few names in this industry carry more history, more cultural impact, or more consumer loyalty. Jonathan has the exciting challenge of taking an iconic brand and building a modern cannabis business around it. Jonathan, thanks for being here. Let's jump in.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Terry.
No problem. Hey, Cheech Chong is one of the, again, iconic names in cannabis. What does it mean to steward a brand with that kind of global recognition? How do you balance nostalgia with building something contemporary and commercially scalable?
A lot of pressure, right? A lot of pressure coming out the gate. 52 years of being advocates for cannabis is what Tommy and Cheech stand for. And we as a company want to bring not only the nostalgia, but what their sentiments are like in dealing with the plant and dealing with consumers and dealing with a lifestyle that they've led and lived through and through, right? So there's a lot of pressure with that, but when we met with them early on, Tommy and Cheech were pretty clear on what the directives were, right? They wanted to have a Cheech Chong legacy that goes beyond them. They wanted to show that the power of the plant was not just being couch locked or robbing banks, that making music, artists, relaxation, culture, lifestyle was all what they were living, right? And they wanted to bring that to consumers in a way that we could, right? So the ultimate mantra of the company was to get products into every consumer's hands that were branded with Cheech Chong so they could have consumer confidence in it, enjoy the product. And then we had to work through regulatory policies, state, federal, you name it, in trying to figure that out. Banking, right?
Banking.
Definitely banking. All of these fun, scenarios. And so, us, and just a quick side note on the banking issue, we started off with some small bank on the cannabis side, and we're just hoping that we didn't get kicked out. Like that's how we started, like a long time ago. And, people like yourself in Safe Harbor being able to give us a place where we can feel confident, because not all of our business is running through the regulated side. We can use banks on the other side of the company too, but we have to give them assurances on what we're doing with the regulated side and the banking, right? So, a lot of this is ready, aim, fire, fix, is kind of the mentality in the cannabis world to an extent, right? Like things are going to pop up at you and change what you're looking at, and you've got to be able to pivot and take a strong direction for the company's name and for the protection of your employees that make this all possible.
I appreciate the shout out and the recognition. It's incredible. You guys were one of our first customers back in the day, and amongst the ones that stick with us very day in and day out. But at the end of the day, every month that goes by, we pick up new cannabis businesses that lost their bank accounts, and about 20% of the banks turn over and say, "Hey, this is not for me." And so to be stable here has been great, and I appreciate you shouting it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Taking that legacy entertainment brand, and you started talking about it, into this very heavily regulated space, fast-changing industry. It's no simple feat. What's been your biggest challenges so far?
Yeah, I think anybody in the cannabis, hemp, let's call it alternative products division, has the challenge of how to make money today in what is the future plan for expansion of those companies, right? And how do you balance the two? Right? Because you got to bring in income immediately, right? Like that's the goal of any company, to be profitable. And that's what we were able to achieve rather quickly out of the gate. And so then it's, okay, how do I best position myself for the future with so many unknowns, right? Like it's an endless list of unknowns, right? We hear whispers that descheduling is going to happen tomorrow or next year or with the next president or with the Biden administration or whatever it may be. Ultimately, like that's okay, but you can't put all your eggs in a basket of something that you don't know. So how do you balance your company? And we've done a really great job, I think, as a company in being able to kind of feel out, what is important to us in the success of this business long term to protect this name, this brand. How do we position ourselves so that we're never over our skis if something changes swiftly, that we are balanced and that we can continue to pivot and create new revenue cycles and continue to get products into people's hands. And so faced with those goals and challenges, it's a daily scenario. I don't want to say fire drill, but sometimes it is, right? But and we've made mistakes. I personally have made a lot of mistakes in growing this business, right? It is not been a, hey, I get everything right and it's been a smooth boat ride. I wish I could say that, but it's not. And so the challenges on an everyday basis is really the best way I found to handle with the how do we make money today and how do we make money long term is having the right people as part of your company. We have such a great team, and that's the only reason we've been able to have any success that's measurable is because of the people that work at this company. Period. Right, and the relationships we have outside of this company.
Fair enough. Appreciate that. And you mentioned something in your comment here, the ability to pivot, and that's a core skill of a chief executive officer, being able to read the market, pivot, and maintain that profitability. You work and play every day in this regulatory environment in California, and we're now hearing mid-November that Congress is debating a potential intoxicating hemp ban with the new CR. What are your views on that, and how are you thinking through the potential of moving away from intoxicating hemp?
Well, yeah. So, I don't want to get into a giant policy discussion here, but the CR would not take place for 365 days. In the interim, there's going to need to be another minibus package to either fund appropriations or, in the flip side of that, a new farm bill, right? So that is not a done deal. It still has to get through the House side, right? It was approved in the Senate, which was a very interesting maneuver, right? It was attached to getting the government opened, but we have the same attachment going on the other side of this to try to get policy back if we fall into that section. Look, our distributors and our partners and our retailers have remained calm through this process. They've supported us. They're going to continue to sell. They have a year to do so. They're fully engaged in doing that and getting new policy either through a new appropriations bill or to the farm bill. There is a separate bill. There's a widened bill out there that's a standalone bill. That's also a possibility that could work. So it's how do you get an industry to come together? This has been a struggle and us trying to get stuff achieved on policy side for cannabis is getting people to come together and agree on what a policy should be because, ultimately lawmakers and decision makers on the Hill or in the Capitol, depending on whether you're talking state or federal, are going to want a clear-cut policy of what matters. And what they can do. And so it sounds easy enough, but it's in the execution of that, it's getting big brands and people to buy into it. And that's going to be a challenge for us on the hemp side over the next 365 days, right? So we're up for that challenge. This is not a nail in the coffin by any means. It's just another situation in which you got to overcome. And if you want to be in an industry with a lot of opportunity, that comes with a lot of risk. And we understand that very well, and we can allocate accordingly.
Yeah, I love that. You're basically saying, hey, this is an obstacle, but we've overcome as an industry group these obstacles before. And you see it as something that has ability to be, overcome, not a nail in the coffin. So, I agree with you 100%. When you look at your business, what markets or partnerships are the most important for your growth so far? And really, how do you evaluate new opportunities? Like, what's your ideal customer and how do you move forward?
We're talking about cannabis regulated and hemp alternative products across the board. And so how we look at it is cannabis, I think, is ultimately the future of mass retail in some capacity. I think we're going to see cannabis drinks fill in with, hemp drinks will be a more or less a beer section. Cannabis drinks will be a liquor section. There could be some interchanging parts there. Nowadays is kind of already jumped to that side. They're very far along in their progress. But I think these things all play together. So on the cannabis side, what I'm looking for is, we're looking for strong partnerships in states that make sense where we can get out products. We have a ton of products that we've developed. We have great packaging to go with it that obviously can be dialed down or dialed up based on the regulation of the state, and making sure we're getting those products and selling those products well. On the hemp side, we're trying to move through those mass retailers on the distribution side and retail partners to get drinks. And these things feed to each other. I think there's a common myth that somehow a hemp-derived beverage is going to steal a cannabis business. It's not. Look at the numbers. They don't sell less than 10 milligram drinks in their stores. That is a very small percentage of their sales, if any. And I think it allows for that customer that we've wanted so long on the cannabis side, that mass retailer, to come into those doors. Well, now they get like what I would call as a trailer to a movie. They get to mess around in a format in which they understand, a drink format, a low dose format, and they get to understand what 5 milligrams feels like. And that prompts them to have that curiosity to walk in there and be able to have that conversation with a bud tender. And so they all work together, because in Illinois, we do both. Mm-hmm. And we've seen substantial growth on both the drinks, the hemp-derived beverages, and the cannabis side since we've been doing both. And so watching these markets work together and climb is amazing, right? So we're looking for strong partnerships always in a state, or if it's federally or regional. What can we do to put in, and what can you do to carry your side of the equation? Because if you have two teams firing on the same cylinders, the growth potential is enormous.
Fair enough. And you've been a partner with Safe Harbor for a while. We are very proud to support Cheech Chong and yourself as a longtime client. As an operator scaling, what do you see as the financial challenges that have been the toughest? And how has working with Safe Harbor helped you?
That's a great question, Terry. I came to Terry, he came to you probably a few months back, called you and kind of in a panic, like, hey, we got the attorneys to set this up. Can you make this work? And, the answer to that was absolutely. We have a product for you that you can do an IP licensing model with, and everybody can feel safe under that model as far as access to their funds and how this is all set up. And we're act as a trustee, and we'll get this rolling for you. And you guys did, right? The agreements came in. We were able to package that as part of the addendum to our agreements with our partners in the state. I mean, my experience with you guys has been phenomenal, right? I don't worry that I'm going to get a letter from you that my bank account's been closed, and that the funds are somewhere sitting in Texas, and they may or may not be mailed to me in the next 30 days. I can sleep very, very peacefully on that. There's other things that keep me up late at night, but that does not, right? So, knowing that, and knowing that when I have an idea and I've got to deal with the attorneys, I've got to deal with the partners, and then I've got to deal with the banking situation on that, knowing that I can have direct access to you, and I'm a fortunate person to do that. And you tell me, don't worry, it's going to be fine. Here's who you talk to, and they're going to set it up for you. And we already have seen this coming. So if you can imagine it, Safe Harbor can work around it, or already has. And that was a fantastic experience, because that was the one piece that I didn't know how that was going to shake out. And you were kind of the last piece I called. Sorry about that, Terry, but it worked out for us. And I was very, very happy to see that work the right way for us rather quickly, and be able to continue in stride with that program, the IP licensing model on retail. And we're going to move it to manufacturing too. And we've already started to do that. So, knowing that you guys are there to answer that call, that piece, that's a very important piece, because people want to know, okay, how do I have access to my money? Where's it going? How does this work? And being able to say, well, don't worry about it. We got that all set up is a great thing to do in a conversation. to buckle down that piece that could be a roadblock in getting a deal done.
Look, I think I appreciate that. And I think, we're doing something a little different here at Safe Harbor. We're being a little more creative in how we solve these problems. And part of that has to do with, one, more than a decade of being committed and building Safe Harbor for the cannabis industry. And then bringing on a team, myself and many others that have specific domain expertise. You and I worked together in the past when I was the CEO of a multi-state operator. And built that relationship from that perspective. And so, not every day you get to work with someone that has that domain expertise as well as the finance expertise. And so, I appreciate you bringing that up, and really thankful for the opportunity to serve you.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. Yeah, being able to answer the unknowns in deal negotiations is always the first step to getting into a deal negotiation, is knowing where you want to go and what your partners are going to be able to be capable of, like not just from our partners on the cannabis side, but on the banking side, even on our legal side, right? Like, yeah. Those poor attorneys, they, I don't know how they feel when they see my name pop up when I'm calling, but I don't know how you feel either, Terry, but it gets done. Man. It gets done. And that's the important thing, because there's a lot of people that need these products, and the only way to get it to them is to have sound business practices, compliance, and so that it's not here today and gone tomorrow, right? You want something that's more permanent, and that regulators can look at and say, maybe we should expand this. We can trust these guys. They're not fly by night guys that are going to take shortcuts and harm the consumer or try to cheat us out of compliance and taxes.
100%. Yes. From Cheech Chong perspective, you guys carry generations of cultural meaning. Everybody knows who you are. From that perspective, how does that influence your decision making, whether it's in marketing, partnerships, product launches? Are there moments in your history that particularly pushed you to hemp or pushed you into a certain product set? Like, what were some of those inflection points or moments that matter?
Yeah, it's tough. You got to stay true to the culture and the brand that you have. And there's a lot of things that could make money very quickly for this company. And we look at everything. Like, there's nothing we don't look at. Some things we've even tried and had to shut down rather quickly because it just is not within the circle of where we want to be. So we're constantly developing products or new products on both sides of the company to try to figure out what works and what fits our culture, right? What we don't want is people to have bad experiences with our product or be like, why did they do this, right? So it's easy to get carried away in these situations. So we've got to have a constant respect for culture. I do talk with Tommy and Cheech pretty regularly on products. Joey Marin is Cheech's son. He's in charge of our products. And we have Brandon Harshberger, who is the president of the company, my partner really in this business. And we have long conversations and we welcome a lot of dissent from people that work in the company. We want to hear what their thoughts are, whether it's from a marketing aspect or if it's from a product aspect on where this potentially can go and if it's off brand, right? You can't see everything all the time. Brandon and I do a pretty good job in understanding most aspects, but it's always good to have input from the rest of the team, which we rely on heavily.
I love that, because what you're talking really about is a leadership style that's focused on transparency and alignment to your strategy. And if you have folks that are comfortable in your organization being transparent with their concerns and their thoughts about decisions that are being made, you get a chance to, have that 360 review and really think about it. And sometimes it's hard to hear someone say, hey, I think you got this wrong, and in whatever way they say it. But often you take a pause and you say, wait, maybe they have a point here, and you refocus before you spend too much money going down the wrong path. Those are the best people that I've ever hired, the ones that tell me I'm wrong. Looking ahead, think 2-3 years down the road. I'm here in Colorado. We're here 5 years out all the time. Where do you see Cheech Chong going? What does success look like for you? Like we, in a nirvana state, where do you see yourselves in 2 to 3 years?
God, Terry, that's an awesome question. And no matter what I say here, I'm going to watch it 2 or 3 years down the line and be like, man, was I wrong? Like what I'd really like to see is I'd like to see dispensaries become more like, more prevalent to a mass audience exposure scenario. I'd like to see products that run from mass retailers to grabbing consumers into the dispensaries. I'd like to see a world where hemp and cannabis have their ability to operate, and because these are some really great products, across both sides, that they have an ability to operate in tandem. And I'd like to see this go just from, in Canada, we don't have hemp drinks. We just have cannabis drinks. In the US, we have hemp drinks, but, cannabis is limited to a state. I'd really like to see this open up for a worldwide scenario where we can sell our products internationally and nationally under regulated and compliant like structures. And we know that people are having a good experience and they have access to what they want. I mean, we've seen the general population move away strongly from alcohol, the younger generations. The millennial and Gen Zs are accounting for about $3 billion worth of sales, whereas every generation before that's about 20 billion plus. And so there's this want to understand something different, right? And how it affects them and how they operate with it. And I think we present that optionality to them. Not just we as Cheech and Chong, but we as many brands, both on the hemp and cannabis side, and being able to do that in a way that's scalable for these companies. I mean, everybody wants scalability. And so, the hard thing for cannabis companies, why they've gotten to the hemp side more like us, is because there's scalability there. But we've never given up on the cannabis side. So finding a clever balance where we do have something, maybe we are a stock ticker, right? And you can invest in Cheech and Chong on NASDAQ would be a dream come true, right? So seeing this thing grow, and we've seen it grow, right? We've seen this grow tens of millions of dollars every year, and very happy about that. But seeing this grow more uniformly on both sides of the business would be fantastic to watch.
Earlier this year, we were looking at some of the analytics, and it came out that we closed 2024 around $34 billion as an industry. People were predicting 11.5% CAGR, and then maybe around 2030, we'd be around at $75 billion. And just the other day, someone posted by 2032, the industry is $132 billion just here in the United States, and not considering the massive growth in Germany and Poland and other international locations. And then, just here on the Americas side, some of the U.S. Virgin Islands, the territories that have cannabis, and they want to have cannabis, but they're not sure how to do it. Jonathan, this has been a terrific conversation. Thank you so much for giving us an inside look on how you're carrying the Cheech and Chong legacy forward. You're building something real, scalable in today's cannabis landscape. That's not easy. No small task to modernize what is an iconic brand. So your perspective on product development, partnerships, financial discipline, hopefully will all resonate with lots of the operators that are listening. To my audience, thank you so much for joining our first episode of Banking with Cannabis, Banking on Cannabis. At Safe Harbor, we're here and we're committed to help you and your cannabis business stay financially healthy with reliable banking, plus financial and operational solutions that were built for the unique challenges of this cannabis industry. This podcast is our way of extending that mission by sharing the stories and strategies behind the leaders shaping today's cannabis. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with others in the industry. We have more great guests and big conversations coming your way. I'm Terry Mendez, CEO of Safe Harbor. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Banking on Cannabis.